Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be reading the next chapter of this book, On This Day, A History of the World in 366 Days. And today we will be looking at the month of May, starting with May 1st, 2005, glorious goal. At 17, Argentinian soccer player Lionel Messi played as a substitute and scored his first goal for FC Barcelona. He went on to become a soccer legend, having scored more than 700 goals by 2021. And of course, many more since. In 1840, Penny Black, the first prepaid sticky postage stamp, was issued in the UK. Called the Penny Black, it showed a portrait of Queen Victoria. Before stamps, people who received letters had to pay the cost of postage. That's unfortunate. And in 1890, Workers' Day. Many countries recognized International Workers' Day as a public holiday. It was held on this day in remembrance of the 1886 Haymarket Affair in the U.S., in which a peaceful protest of Chicago workers turned into a deadly fight with the police. Also on this day in 1707, the Acts of Union joined the nations of England and Scotland together to create the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And in 1999, the U.S. animated show SpongeBob SquarePants first aired on Nickelodeon. It is the longest-running series on this TV channel. And born this day in 1852, Calamity Jane, hero of the American Wild West. She was known for her bravery and shooting skills, as well as her charitable nature. Next, we have May 2nd, 1945, Battle for Berlin. In the final European battle of World War II, the Soviet Red Army seized the German capital of Berlin. This event led to the downfall of Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime. In 1978, Rainbow Warrior. The Greenpeace ship Rainbow Warrior set sail on a global campaign against harmful ocean activities, including dumping nuclear waste and whale and seal hunting. In 1922, Constellation Convention. The modern list of 88 constellations was agreed at the first meeting of the International Astronomical Union in Rome, Italy. More than half of these groups of stars are based on ancient Greek constellations. There's Orion. Also on this day in 1611, the King James Bible was published. It went on to sell more than 1 billion copies as the most popular English translation of the Bible. And in 1670, England's King Charles II gave control of a vast area of what would later become Canada to the Hudson Bay Company. Born this day, 1972, is Dwayne Johnson, American-Canadian wrestler, better known as The Rock. He went on to take center stage as an action star. And in 1975, David Beckham, British soccer player. He played with Manchester United and won multiple league titles and cup victories. Next is May 3rd. Starting in 2000, geocaching games begin. U.S. computer whiz Dave Ulmer hid a small container called a geocache in the woods by Beaver Creek, Oregon, kick-starting the pastime of geocaching. Players use satellite navigation and codes from the internet to locate hidden items. 1960, musical sensation. A musical comedy about love and life, The Fantastics opened in New York City. With 17,162 performances in the following 42 years, the show would become the longest-running musical of all time. And 1979, Iron Lady. Margaret Thatcher was elected Britain's Prime Minister, making her the first woman to take the top job. The Iron Lady was the only 20th century Prime Minister to win 3 consecutive terms in office. Also on this day, in 1803, the U.S. nearly doubled in size with the Louisiana Purchase. French leader Napoleon Bonaparte sold the land to raise war funds. 1947, Japan's constitution came into effect after World War II. It limited the emperor's power and banned the government from starting wars. And 1978, the first spam email, which featured a computer advertisement, was sent to 400 users in the U.S. Well, 1978. Born this day in 1933, James Brown, Black American singer and songwriter. Originally a gospel singer, he became a soul and funk star. Next is May 4th. Let's start in 1912, Teenage Campaigner. In one of her many campaigns to promote equality for women, Chinese-American teenager Mabel Pinghua Lee arrived on horseback to lead almost 10,000 people in a parade for suffrage, which is the right to vote for all, in New York City. 1942, Battle of the Coral Sea. The first sea battle between aircraft carriers began as the Japanese Navy fought the combined American and Australian forces during World War II. The Allies won, gaining control of the Coral Sea. And 1607, English settlers. A party of 104 English pioneers established a settlement on the shores of Virginia in North America. Eventually known as Jamestown, it became the first successful English colony on the continent. Also on this day in 1919, mass protests by students in Beijing, China resulted in the May 4th movement, which encouraged equality and education for women. 2013, the Walt Disney Company began an annual celebration of Star Wars with special events held at its theme parks. So of course, May the 4th be with you. And in 2019, Kenyan runner Bigon Andrew Kiplangat took a wrong turn during a marathon in Qingdao, China. He had to be helped back on track before winning the race. Oh, he still won. Amazing. Born this day in 1929, Audrey Hepburn, British actor. She is famous for her iconic role in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Next is May 5th. In 1862, we have Cinco de Mayo. Following the French invasion of Mexico, Mexican troops defeated a far larger battalion of French soldiers at the Battle of Puebla. This triumph is still celebrated every 5th of May, or Cinco de Mayo. There's a big misconception that Cinco de Mayo is Mexican Independence Day. No, that's in September. Anyway, next is 1921, Perfume of Choice. French fashion designer Coco Chanel released her best-selling Chanel No. 5 fragrance. This luxury scent combined 80 ingredients in a rectangular bottle. And 1861, Italy. Italian General Giuseppe Garibaldi set off on the Expedition of the Thousand. He sailed from Genoa and overthrew the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, in a key development that led toward the unification of Italy. Also on this day, in 1260, Kublai Khan became ruler of the vast Mongol Empire in East Asia. He would eventually become Emperor of China. In 1958, the Children's Peace Monument was unveiled in Japan on the annual Children's Day to honor the many thousands of children who died in the Hiroshima tragedy of 1945. And in 1984, Itaipu Dam in South America began generating electricity. It was the world's largest hydroelectric dam until 2012. Born this day in 1892, Dorothy Garrett, or Jared, I'm not sure. British archaeologist and professor. In 1939, she became the first woman to be made a professor at Cambridge University, UK. And in 1988, Adele, British singer and songwriter. She became a global superstar after record-breaking sales of her first album, which showcased her remarkable voice. Next is May 6th. And in 1998, it's the launch of the iMac. Apple launched its first all-in-one desktop computer, the iMac. It featured a colorful translucent case with matching keyboard and mouse, a CD drive, built-in speakers, and very easy setup. It was Apple's most successful product in years. I still think they look cool. I don't know if it's because I'm a 90s kid, but I still think they look really awesome. I wish they still made computers like that. 1782, Royal Home. Building work started on the Grand Palace, the royal residence of the King of Siam, which is now Thailand, after the capital city was moved to Bangkok from Thonburi. The royal family lived there until 1925, and now the palace is a museum. And in 1937, the end of airships. A fire on board the German passenger airship Hindenburg resulted in a crash in New Jersey, killing 35 passengers. The public lost confidence in this mode of travel, and the era of airships ended. Also on this day, in 1954, British athlete Roger Bannister became the world's first person to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Wow. In 1994, the Channel Tunnel opened, joining Britain and France with a 31-mile railroad under the English Channel. And in 2002, South African innovator Elon Musk founded the space travel company SpaceX with the ultimate goal of colonizing Mars. Good luck with that, Elon. And born this day in 1856, Sigmund Freud, Austrian neurologist. He developed a method to help patients with mental health problems by exploring their past. Next is May 7th. Oh, I forgot to say, if you celebrate a May birthday, let me know what your favorite fact is on your birthday. Hopefully you're still awake if you're born in May. In 2015, pirate treasure. Underwater explorers found a 121-pound silver bar off the coast of Saint Marie Island in Madagascar. Wow. It was believed to be a piece from the legendary loot of Scottish pirate Captain William Kidd. 1953, colossal catch. After a 2-hour battle, fisherman Louis Maron, landed the heaviest fish ever caught using a rod and reel, a 1,180-pound swordfish caught off the coast of Chile. And in 1867, dynamite in demand. Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel patented dynamite, a new explosive that could be shaped and sold in the form of sticks. Unlike earlier explosives, it didn't explode spontaneously, which made it safer to handle. The invention helped make Nobel a millionaire. Also on this day in 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allied forces during World War II in the city of Rheims in France. Next year, 1946, Masaru Ibuka and Akio Morita founded the Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation, which went on to become the Japanese technology giant Sony. And in 1986, Canadian mountaineer Patrick Morrow completed his quest to climb the highest peak on each of the world's 7 continents, becoming the first person to do so. And born this day in 1748 is Olympe de Gouges, French playwright and women's rights activist. She challenged gender inequality through her work. Next is May 8th. 2014, a rare find. Diver David Mearns found the oldest known astrolabe, an astronomical device used by sailors for navigation. It was found in the wreckage of the Portuguese ship Esmeralda, which sank in 1503. 1945 is Victory in Europe Day. Cities across Western Europe and North America celebrated the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. The hard-fought victory had come at the cost of millions of lives and widespread destruction. And in 1984, the Thames Barrier. Thousands watched as the UK's Queen Elizabeth II opened a set of 66-foot-tall steel gates built across the Thames River to prevent it from flooding central London. Also on this day, in 1834, the first part of Hans Christian Andersen's Fairy Tales was published in Copenhagen, Denmark. It included the story of The Princess and the Pea. In 1902, nearly 30,000 people died when Mount Pelée volcano erupted over the town of Saint-Pierre, Martinique. And in 1996, the new Constitution of South Africa was the first in the world to protect the rights of LGBTQ plus people. Born this day, 1926, is David Attenborough, British broadcaster and naturalist. He's famous for his spectacular TV documentaries about natural history. And in 1975 is Enrique Iglesias, Spanish-American singer. He's known as the king of Latin pop. Next is May 9th. 1950, it's Smokey Bear. During a forest fire in New Mexico, firefighters rescued a bear cub with burned legs and paws clinging to a tree. Nicknamed Smokey Bear, the cub went on to become a famous icon for forest fire prevention. In 1941, it's the Enigma machine. The British Royal Navy captured a German submarine from which it recovered one of the Enigma machines used by the Nazis to turn secret German messages to unreadable codes during World War II. British code breakers would eventually learn how to read the codes. And in 2017, dinosaur eggs. Scientists studying a nest of 90-million-year-old fossilized dinosaur eggs found in China in 1993 named the species Beibelong sinensis, meaning baby dragon from China. It was a large feathered dinosaur. Also on this day in 1901, the first Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia was opened at a grand ceremony in Melbourne by the UK's Prince George, who later became King George V. And in 1950, French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman suggested European powers produce coal and steel jointly so that they would be less likely to go to war again. This was the first step toward the creation of the European Union many years later. Born this day, 1921, Sophie Scholl, German student activist. She was a member of White Rose, a nonviolent anti-Nazi resistance group. Scholl was executed in 1943 at the age of 21. And in 1979, Rosario Dawson, U.S. actor. She co-founded Voto Latino, an organization that encourages young Hispanic people to vote. Next is May 10th. 1752, Sparks in the Sky. French scientist Thomas-François Dalibard threw sparks from a thunderstorm with a 50-foot iron rod raised toward the clouds near Paris, France. The experiment demonstrated that lightning is a form of electricity. In 1940, War Leader. Winston Churchill replaced Neville Chamberlain as the United Kingdom's Prime Minister. Churchill led the country through World War II and played a major role in the Allied victory. And 1869, the Golden Spike. A spike made of 18-karat gold was driven into a railroad track in Utah to mark the completion of the U.S.'s first transcontinental railroad. The track connected Sacramento in the west with Omaha in the east. Also on this day, in 1857, Indian troops began an unsuccessful revolt against the British in the First War of Independence. In 1933, student groups supporting the Nazi regime burned books by Jewish and liberal writers, claiming the books were un-German. And in 1994, following a historic election victory, Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first black president. And born this day in 1960 is Merlene Ottey, a Jamaican-Slovenian athlete. A track and field sprinter, she competed in every Summer Olympics from 1980 to 2004. Wow. What country did she compete with? I don't know. Next is May 11th. Starting in 1893, setting a record. Amateur French cyclist Henri Desgrange covered 21,950 miles in 1 hour at the Velodrome Buffalo cycling track. My goodness, I need to slow down. Cycling track in Paris, France, setting the first hour record in cycling. Way back in 330 CE, founding Constantinople. A new capital for the Roman Empire was established by Emperor Constantine at the city of Byzantium. It was renamed Constantinople after its founder. Today it is the city of Istanbul in Turkey. And in 868, the Diamond Sutra. The oldest printed book in existence was created in ancient China. The sacred Buddhist text was discovered in a hidden cave near Dunhuang, China, in 1900. Also on this day in 1846, following a border dispute between the U.S. and Mexico, U.S. President James K. Polk asked Congress to declare war on Mexico. In 2000, according to official records, the population of India reached 1 billion people. And in 2019, scientists at Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii announced that the carbon dioxide level in Earth's atmosphere had reached levels not seen for 300 million years. Born this day in 1904, Salvador Dali, Spanish artist. He was known for his surrealist style, which made use of unusual, dreamlike imagery. And in 1906, Jacqueline Cochran, U.S. racing pilot. She was the first woman to fly faster than the speed of sound. Next is May 12th. In 1926, we have a polar record. Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen, American pilot Lincoln Ellsworth, and Italian engineer Umberto Nobile, along with 13 other crew members, made the first ever flight over the North Pole in an enormous airship called Norge. 1743, Queen of Bohemia. Maria Theresa, the daughter of Emperor Charles VI, was crowned on this day, becoming the first female monarch of Bohemia, which is in modern-day Czechia. Her reign lasted for 40 years. In 1881, streetcar sensation Lichterfelde in Berlin, Germany, welcomed the world's first electric streetcar. In its first 3 months, the streetcar carried a total of about 12,000 passengers along its 1.5-mile-long route. Also on this day, in 1941, German inventor Konrad Zuse presented the Z3, the first fully automatic computer, at the German Laboratory for Aviation in Berlin. In 2002, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter became the first U.S. leader to visit Cuba since Fidel Castro rose to power during a violent revolution in 1959. In 2017, a malicious software called WannaCry infected more than 400,000 computers across the world, It locked users' computer files, then demanded a ransom to release them. Ransomware. The most vicious kind of virus. Next is May 13th. In 1995, Everest Pioneer. When British climber Alison Hargreaves reached the summit of Mount Everest without a companion or any bottled oxygen, wow, she became the first woman in the world to accomplish such a feat. That's intense. 1958, 10-year journey. Australian adventurer Ben Carlin became the first person to circle the globe in an amphibious vehicle, which is one that can move on land and on water, called Half Safe, when he returned to Canada after 10 years of travel. I want to do that. That sounds fun. And in 1909, Giro d'Italia. In Italy, a little before 3 a.m., 127 cyclists set off from Milan on the world's first multi-stage bicycle race. Over the next 2 weeks, they cycled nearly 1,553 miles across the country before returning to Milan on May 30th. Also on this day, in 1861, John Tebbutt spotted comet C1861J1, one of the brightest comets seen in the 19th century, as it passed over Windsor, Australia. Lucky. 1943, the Axis forces finally surrendered to the Allies in Tunisia, following intense battles in the deserts of northern Africa in World War II. And in 1968, around 800,000 protesters marched in Paris, France, demanding the resignation of President Charles de Gaulle for incidents of police brutality. And born this day in 1986, Robert Pattinson, British actor. Rising to fame for his role as a vampire in the popular Twilight movies, he's now a leading actor in Hollywood. Next is May 14th. 1796, the first vaccine. British doctor Edward Jenner injected 8-year-old James Phipps with pus taken from the blisters of a milkmaid infected with cowpox. The vaccine gave the child immunity or resistance against a similar but much more deadly disease called smallpox. 2016, fantastic flip. Brazilian surfer Gabriel Medina stunned spectators and surfing fans around the world by landing the first ever backflip in a competition, earning a perfect score of 10 from the judges. That sounds really hard to do while surfing. 2008, bear in danger. Following a legal campaign by environmentalists, the polar bear was finally listed as threatened in the U.S., signaling that action was needed to protect the Arctic species. Polar bears are at risk because climate change is melting their sea ice habitat. Also on this day, in 1918, the practice of observing a 2-minute silence originated on this day, when people in Cape Town, South Africa, stood still to remember those killed in World War I. 1948, a new and independent Jewish state called Israel was established after the United Nations divided Palestine between Jews and Arabs. And in 1955, Soviet Union and countries in Eastern Europe signed the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance against external attacks. And born this day in 1984 is Mark Zuckerberg, U.S. tech innovator and entrepreneur. He co-founded the social media site Facebook while still a student at Harvard University in Massachusetts. Next is May 15th. Starting in 2007, Scratch is released. The computer programming language Scratch, developed in the U.S., was made freely available to the public, allowing users to easily create their own games and animations. In 221 CE, the Three Kingdoms. After the fall of the Han Dynasty in China, General Liu Bei set up the state of Shuhan. This was one of 3 states that were collectively known as the Three Kingdoms. And in 1869, Votes for Women. In New York City, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony founded the National Woman Suffrage Association, an organization that campaigned for women to be given the right to vote. Also on this day in 1897, in Berlin, German physicist Magnus Hirschfeld founded the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, the first organization in history to fight for LGBTQ+ rights. In 1926, Mickey Mouse appeared on screen for the first time in Walt Disney's silent short film Plane Crazy. In 1972, the Ryukyu Islands were finally returned to Japan and renamed Okinawa after 26 years of U.S. military control. Oh, and born this day. In 1857, Wilhelmina Fleming, Scottish astronomer. She worked at the Harvard College Observatory in Boston, where she discovered the Horsehead Nebula in 1888. And in 1987, Andy Murray, Scottish tennis player. He was the world's #1 male tennis player in 2016 and has won 3 Grand Slam singles titles. Next is May 16th. In 1888, Electric Talk. In a lecture to engineers in New York City, Serbian-American inventor Nikola Tesla demonstrated his new alternating current power system, which is still in use today. In 1943, Dam Buster Raid. During World War II, British planes unleashed a new weapon, bouncing bombs, that skimmed across water. The bombs destroyed a series of dams in Germany's Ruhr region, flooding the area and killing 1,300 people. In 1945, kick volleyball. Teams from Penang, Malaysia, played in the first official competition of Sepak Takraw, a fast-paced game of foot volleyball popular in Southeast Asia, in which players use their feet, knees, or heads to get a ball over a high net and score. Also on this day, in 1832, Chilean miner Juan Godoy discovered large amounts of silver in the ground near Chopiapo, Chile, sparking the Chilean Silver Rush. In 1929, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences gave out its first annual awards, nicknamed the Oscars, in California. And in 1985, British scientists working in Antarctica announced that they had found a 7.3 million square mile hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole. Next is May 17th. 1859, Aussie Rules. The rules for Australia's version of football were established by members of the Melbourne Cricket Club. It's thought the sport was invented to keep cricketers fit during their off-season. 1900, Wonderful Wizard of Oz. U.S. author Lyman Frank Baum gave the first printed copy of his novel to his sister Mary. The story, about a young girl's adventures in the magical land of Oz with her friends, the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, was later made into a much-loved movie. 1970, Papyrus Boat Voyage. Norwegian scientist Thor Heyerdahl set sail from Morocco in an attempt to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Heyerdahl and his crew traveled in a papyrus boat crafted by the Aymara people of Bolivia. They arrived in Barbados 57 days later. Also on this day in 1861, Scottish scientist James Clerk Maxwell showed the first color photograph, a picture of a tartan ribbon, at King's College, London, UK. In 1902, the Antikythera mechanism, the world's first known mechanical computer, was identified among the artifacts recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that having separate schools for white and black students was illegal. I forgot the Born on This Day yesterday. 1966 on May 16th is one of my favorites. Janet Jackson, Black American singer and actor. This successful pop and R&B star has sold more than 100 million records. I love Janet. Hot take. I kind of love Janet more than Michael. Just by a little bit. Born this day in 1971 on May 17th is Queen Maxima, Queen Consort of the Netherlands. She works to help immigrants, especially women, settle into Dutch society. Next is May 18th. In 1804, Emperor Napoleon. After conquering much of Europe, French military leader Napoleon Bonaparte became the self-appointed Emperor of France. He introduced government reforms, but constant battles overseas led to his downfall. 1830 Lawnmower Deal. Trimming lawns became easier after inventor Edwin Budding and manufacturer John Farrabee struck a deal to start making the world's first lawnmowers in Gloucestershire, UK. 1927 Hollywood Cinema. Thousands lined Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles for the opening of Grauman's Chinese Theater. The famous cinema has hosted many movie premieres, including Star Wars in 1977. Also on this day, in 1291, the city of Acre, the last stronghold of Christian crusaders in the Holy Land, was captured by Muslim forces. In 1893, Maritai Mangakahia became the first woman to speak to the all-male Maori Parliament in New Zealand. In 1991, the first British astronaut, 27-year-old Helen Sharman, traveled to the Mir space station on a Soyuz spacecraft. And born this day, I won't forget anymore, I promise. 1955, Chow Yun-fat, Chinese actor and screenwriter. He starred in the Oscar-winning movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And in 1970, Tina Fey, U.S. actor, comedian, and writer. She found fame as a performer and writer on U.S. TV show Saturday Night Live. Next is May 19th. Starting with 2018, Royal Wedding. Hundreds of millions of people watched on TV as the UK's Prince Harry wed U.S. actor Meghan Markle at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, UK. 1780, Dark Day. A mysterious darkness spread across New England and parts of Canada, causing people to light candles at midday. The cause was never found. To 1906, Through the Alps. The 12-mile Simplon Tunnel through the Alps mountains opened, linking Italy and Switzerland. It was the world's longest railroad tunnel until 1982. Can you guys hear that bird outside? I'm literally filming at like 4 in the morning, and this bird has been coming for the past week and just screaming its head off in the middle of the night. Oh. Also on this day in 1845, explorer Sir John Franklin set sail from Britain with a crew of 128 to find the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. They later perished at sea. In 1910, Earth passed through the tail of Halley's Comet during a spectacular close approach, and the comet was photographed for the first time. And in 2020, global greenhouse gas emissions fell by 17% due to lockdowns to fight the spread of COVID-19. And born this day in 1948, two queens born this day. In 1948, Grace Jones, Jamaican-American singer, songwriter, model, and actor. She's known for her unique style and creative flair. And in 2003, JoJo Siwa, U.S. entertainer and YouTube star. In 2020, Time magazine included her in its list of the world's 100 most influential people. Next is May 20th. 1498, Passage to India. Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama arrived at Calicut in India, ensuring his place in history by becoming the first European to reach India by sea. The breakthrough route enabled Portuguese colonists to begin trading with Asia. 2005, monkey business. Scientists announced their discovery of a new species of monkey. The Kipunji lives in the highland forests of Tanzania, Africa, and has a population of just over 1,000. And in 1999, Grand Canyon jump. Daredevil American motorcyclist Robbie Knievel jumped 228 feet across the Grand Canyon in Arizona to a backdrop of fireworks as viewers watched on live TV. Very American. He lost control of his vehicle on landing and broke his leg. But, he survived, right? Also on this day, in 1570, the first modern atlas called Theatrum Orbis Terrarum, or Theater of the World, was released by Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius. In 1927, U.S. aviator Charles Lindbergh flew from New York City to Paris, France, in the first solo transatlantic flight. In 1990, NASA's Hubble Space Telescope took its first photograph, a spectacular starry image of the Pincushion cluster in the Carina constellation. And born this day in 1908, James Stewart, U.S. actor. He starred in the Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life. Another queen. In 1946, Cher, U.S. singer and songwriter. Known for her eclectic style, she has enjoyed a career in music and movies spanning 6 decades. Next is May 21st. In 1871, Up the Mountain. Europe's first mountain railroad opened in Switzerland. The Wiedsnau-Rigi Railway climbs Mount Rigi from Wiedsnau on the shore of Lake Lucerne. It was the brainchild of Swiss engineer Nikolaus Regenbach, who wanted passengers to enjoy the breathtaking alpine views. In 1932, Earhart's flight, the first woman and second person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. American aviator Amelia Earhart took off from Newfoundland, Canada, and landed 15 hours later in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. 2013, Console Unwrapped. U.S. software corporation Microsoft unveiled its Xbox One console, which could be used to play games or watch TV shows and movies. More than 48 million consoles were sold in the 7 years following its launch. Also on this day, in 1792, the eruption of Mount Unzen in Japan triggered an earthquake, a landslide, and a 330-foot tall tsunami. In 1904, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, the highest governing body for the sport of soccer, was founded in Paris, France, by 7 European nations. I always wondered what FIFA stood for. And in 2010, the first spacecraft powered by solar radiation, Icarus, was launched by Japanese space agency JAXA. Born this day in 1994 is Tom Daley, British diver. He's won 10 gold medals at Commonwealth, European, and World Championships. Next is May 22nd. 1980, Hunger Game. The first Pac-Man machine was installed at an amusement arcade in Tokyo, Japan. Created by video game designer Toru Iwatani, this classic game about a hungry character in a maze became the most successful arcade game ever. 1987, Man in Motion. After 2 years traveling by wheelchair on the Man in Motion World Tour, Canadian athlete Rick Hansen returned to Vancouver, Canada. He had wheeled more than 24,800 miles to highlight the potential of disabled people. 1762, Fountain of Love. The Trevi Fountain was opened in Rome, Italy. This spectacular marble fountain, thought to bring good luck and love to those who toss coins in the water, is visited by around 1,000 tourists every hour. Wow. Also on this day in 1900, Swiss sailor Helene de Portale became the first woman to compete and to win gold at the Olympics. In 1918, Spanish newspaper ABC reported the outbreak of a deadly flu epidemic known as the Spanish flu. Many historians now think the outbreak began in France. In 1960, the biggest earthquake in recorded history, a 9.5 on the Richter scale, devastated Valdivia in Chile. And born this day, 1987, Novak Djokovic, Serbian tennis player. He's one of the world's most successful players with 18 Grand Slams to his name. Next is May 23rd, 1934, Partners in Crime. American outlaws Bonnie Parker and Clyde Champion Barrow were ambushed, shot, and killed by police officers in Louisiana. Their crime spree of murder and robbery had finally caught up with them after 2 years on the run. 1576, Astronomer's Island. Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe was gifted Ven Island by King Frederick II, where he set up the Uraniborg Observatory. While working there, Brahe made important discoveries, such as the exact length of year. And 1618, Lucky Escape. Angered by their Catholic king's decision to stop the building of a Protestant church, a mob in Bohemia, in present-day Czech Republic, threw the king's representatives out the windows of Prague Castle. Luckily, the men survived. Kind of a tradition in Bohemia. Also on this day in 1915, during World War I, Italy declared war on Austria-Hungary and sided with the Allies. 1962, U.S. surgeon Ronald Malt reattached a young boy's severed arm. It was the first time this type of operation had been successful. And in 2015, Ireland became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage as a result of a public vote. And born this day in 1848, Otto Lilienthal, German aviator. He was known as the Flying Man, and his multiple successful flights were covered in newspapers published at the time. In 1908, Hélène Boucher, French pilot. She set impressive world records for flight altitudes and speeds. Good day for pilots to be born. Next is May 24th. In 2018, cat-free zone. The world's longest cat-proof fence was completed at New Haven Wildlife Sanctuary, Australia. Measuring 27 miles long, it protects native birds and marsupials, such as the rufous hair wallaby, from wildcats. 1844, Morse code. U.S. inventor Samuel Morse and machinist Alfred Vail sent the first message by telegraph from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, Maryland. The message, "What hath God wrought?" was coded with dots and dashes. 1883, Mighty Bridge. The opening of the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City was celebrated with fireworks and a musical performance. The world's longest suspension bridge at the time, it connected the boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn. Also on this day, 1798, inspired by similar uprisings in France and the U.S., an Irish rebellion was a major landmark in the country's long struggle for independence from British rule. 1882, the Battle of Pichincha took place on the slopes of the Pichincha volcano in present-day Ecuador, bringing victory for South American rebels and ending Spanish rule. And in 1956, the first Eurovision Song Contest was staged in Lugano, Switzerland, with 7 countries taking part. Born this day in 1686 is Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit, Polish-born physicist. He invented the first widely used thermometer and devised the Fahrenheit temperature scale used in the U.S. today. No thank you to him. I don't like being in the only country that uses Fahrenheit. And I know there are other countries, but you can count them all on one hand. Next is May 25th. 2001 Peak of Success. U.S. adventurer Eric Weihenmayer, that's the last name, Eric Weihenmayer became the first blind person to climb to the summit of Mount Everest. He was featured on the cover of Time magazine in celebration of his achievements. And in 2020, Black Lives Matter. In the U.S., a black man named George Floyd was killed by a police officer, triggering protests around the world and bringing global attention to the hashtag Black Lives Matter, or BLM movement, which stands against police brutality toward black people. Also on this day, 1521, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V declared Protestant priest Martin Luther a heretic, or unbeliever, worsening divisions in the Catholic Church. In 1810, Argentina became the first South American nation to declare independence from Spain. And in 1861, during the U.S. Civil War, Canadian-born soldier Sarah Edmonds joined the Northern Army, disguised as a man named Franklin Thompson. Born this day, some more queens, 1939, Ian McKellen, British actor. During his 60-year career, he has been cast in a variety of roles, both on stage and on screen. And in 1970, Octavia Spencer, Black American actor. She's the first black female actor to be nominated for an Oscar 2 years in a row, winning one for her role in The Help. Next is May 26th, 1940, The Miracle of Dunkirk. The excavation, holy moly, the evacuation of 338,000, imagine the excavation digging you out the earth, anyway. The Miracle of Dunkirk, the evacuation of 338,226 Allied troops began on the beach of Dunkirk in France during World War II. More than 800 boats came to rescue the soldiers, who had become trapped between invading German forces and the North Sea. In 1923, Le Mans race. The first 24 hours of Le Mans, one of the world's most famous car races, began near Le Mans, France. In this annual competition, drivers compete to cover the furthest distance in 24 hours. 1897 Gothic thriller. Dracula, a horror novel about the blood-sucking vampire Count Dracula by Bram Stoker, was published. London bookstores were the first to stock this terrifying Gothic classic, which was later translated into many languages and adapted for film and TV. Also on this day, in 1954, a wooden funeral ship built to take the soul of Egyptian pharaoh Khufu to heaven was discovered buried next to the Great Pyramid at Giza in Egypt. 1998, Australia's first National Sorry Day was held. The annual event commemorates the mistreatment of first Australians by European settlers. And in 2019, Alan Nasty Nash won the World Toe Wrestling title for a record-breaking 16th time. And born this day in 1966 is the wonderful Helena Bonham Carter, British actor. She is best known for playing quirky characters in period dramas and Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter series of movies. Next is May 27th, 1931, High Flyer. Swiss physicist Auguste Piccard and assistant Paul Kipfer set a record for the highest flight and became the first humans to enter Earth's stratosphere. Traveling in an aluminum capsule attached to a hydrogen balloon, They reached a dizzying 51,775 feet over Augsburg, Germany. That's too high, my goodness. In 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge. After 4 years of construction, the Golden Gate Bridge, at the time the world's longest suspension bridge, opened in San Francisco, California, with a special pedestrian day. About 200,000 people joined the celebrations on the bridge before vehicles began crossing the next day. And in 1905, the Battle of Tsushima. In this epic naval battle fought in the waters off Japan during the Russo-Japanese War, Japanese forces almost wiped out the Russian fleet. Also on this day, in 1941, an attack by British battleships sank the gigantic German vessel Bismarck in the Atlantic Ocean off France. 1963, Jomo Kenyatta was announced as the first Prime Minister of Kenya. Thousands took to the streets of Kenya's capital, Nairobi, to celebrate. And in 1997, the first entirely female polar expedition arrived at the North Pole, having traveled from Ward Hunt Island in Canada by skis and sleighs. Born this day in 1837, Wild Bill Hickok, legendary gunfighter and folk hero in America's Wild West. He built his reputation by telling false or exaggerated tales about his exploits. Next is May 28th. In 585 BCE, definitely the oldest date we've had yet for this month, predicting an eclipse. Greek philosopher Thales correctly foretold a solar eclipse in Asia Minor, as recorded in the histories by Herodotus. The darkening skies brought a sudden end to the Battle of Halys. In 1907, racing motorcycles. The Isle of Man TT race started with 25 competitors riding their motorcycles for 158 miles. The prize for the winner was a silver statue and 25 pounds. This annual race is a deadly test of speed and skill on mountainous roads with 264 corners. And 2018 Cheese Champion. After winning his 21st race, British soldier Chris Anderson was hailed as the greatest double Gloucester cheese rolling champion ever. At this annual event in Brockworth, UK, participants run down a hill to catch a rolling round of cheese. Also on this day, in 1830, U.S. President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, which took away the land rights of indigenous American peoples. In 1932, the Afsluitdijk Dam was completed in the Netherlands, with an incredible 20 miles of flood defenses against the North Sea. Dutch people let me know how badly I butchered that. In 1936, British mathematician Alan Turing submitted his article on computable numbers, which described a universal computing machine. More queens, oh my gosh, born this day, 1968, Kylie Minogue, Australian actor and singer. Known as the Princess of Pop, she has sold more than 70 million records worldwide. You can kind of tell my music style by this, can't you? We got Janet, Cher, Kylie. Anyway, JoJo Siwa. Moving on to May 29th, 1851, Truth Talk. Formerly enslaved women's rights activist Sojourner Truth addressed the Women's Conference in Ohio. Her powerful speech, known as Ain't I a Woman, was published in U.S. newspapers, helping spread the message of gender and racial equality. 1453, the fall of Constantinople. Ottoman ruler Sultan Mehmed II seized the city of Constantinople, which again is modern-day Istanbul, following a siege lasting 53 days. This marked the end of the once powerful Byzantine Empire. And in 1953, on top of the world. Lots of Mount Everest things this month. New Zealand explorer Edmund Hillary and Sherpa mountaineer Tenzing Norgay became the first people to set foot on the summit of Mount Everest, the highest peak on Earth. Also on this day in 1766, the discovery of a gas now known as hydrogen was revealed by British chemist Henry Cavendish at the Royal Society in London, UK. In 1935, the German Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighter plane flew for the first time, serving later in World War II. And in 2019, the YouTube channel T-Series, which plays Bollywood movie trailers and music videos, became the first to have 100 million subscribers. Born this day, yet another queen. In 1975 is Mel B, British pop singer. She found fame as Scary Spice in the girl group Spice Girls. She's also an actor and a talent show judge. Yeah, she judges like America's Got Talent, which is weird because like none of the judges on America's Got Talent are American. It's like Simon Cowell, Mel B, like it's Howie Mandel sometimes, right? Anyway, next is May 30th. 1848, Keep It Cool. U.S. entrepreneur William Young filed a patent for his ice cream freezer after adapting inventor Nancy Johnson's original design. People can now make their own ice cream at home. 1943, Women's Baseball. The new All-American Girls Professional Baseball League played its opening games after the men's league was suspended because of World War II. The women's league ran for 11 years and attracted huge crowds. In 1899, Bandit Queen. Canadian-born outlaw Pearl Hart robbed a stagecoach at gunpoint in Arizona, one of the last robberies of its kind. The so-called Bandit Queen became famous as one of the few female criminals in the Wild West. Another queen. Also on this day, 1431, accused of witchcraft and heresy, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in Rouen, France. 1868, to mark the first Decoration Day, now called Memorial Day in the U.S., flowers were placed on the 20,000 graves of those who died in the U.S. Civil War. And in 1975, the European Space Agency was established, with 10 countries signing up to show their commitment to space exploration. And born this day, 1975, Marissa Ann Mayer, U.S. entrepreneur and software engineer. She helped develop the Google search engine before becoming president of Yahoo. And lastly, we have May 31st. Starting in 2016, viral video. Catchy K-pop hit Gangnam Style by South Korean rapper Psy became the first video to get 2 billion views on YouTube and was the site's most watched video for nearly 5 years. Psy's routine sparked a global dance craze. 1740, Frederick the Great. Frederick II took over the throne of Prussia, a European kingdom that included northern Germany and Poland. He won many battles and turned Prussia into a powerful nation. 1895, breakfast cereal. A patent for flaked cereal was filed by U.S. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. While researching healthy foods for his patients, he had flaked a dough mixture, which he then served with milk, just cornflakes. Okay, this is the oldest date, our very last one. 1279 BCE, powerful pharaoh. Sorry, I just had a coughing fit. Powerful pharaoh, I'm almost done too. Powerful pharaoh. Ramses II became pharaoh of the New Kingdom in ancient Egypt, beginning a 66-year-long reign in which he expanded the empire and built impressive monuments. Also on this day in 1879, the first electric railroad built by German engineer Werner von Siemens was shown at the Berlin Trade Exhibition in Germany. In 1910, 4 provinces joined to form the Union of South Africa under a single government. And in 1970, the Huascarán de Brie avalanche set off by the Ancash earthquake, devastated Yungay, Peru. It was the worst avalanche in history. Born this day in 1921, Chen Shengwu, Chinese-American scientist. She researched nuclear weapons for the Manhattan Project. My History magazine has a little article about her this month. Maybe I'll read it. In 1930, Clint Eastwood, U.S. actor and director. The star of the Dirty Harry film series, he has had a 60-year-long career. And that is it for me. I filmed this in one take. I desperately need some water, so that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still awake after an hour-long video, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very, very good night. Good night.